Black Politics Today. An eye for what's at stake in global politics and your source for the social, economic, and political impact of public policy on the African American community. Your host, Kelly Michael Williams, is a political strategy veteran with an undefeated campaign record and the political experience that spans nearly 3 decades, from Mayor Willie Brown in California to President Barack Obama in our nation's capital. So get ready for a fresh and honest approach on the politics that affect you and your family the most. Now, your host, Kelly Michael Williams.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Kelly Michael Williams. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Of course, as we always do, I always pause and thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, just for allowing me to host this broadcast and to have this show, because certainly I recognize and understand that, hey, with everything that's going on in America now, there is no real, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees of what's going to happen, what we're going to be able to do. So I'm excited. I'm ecstatic about just being able to host the broadcast and to have the guests that I'm continuously able to receive each and every week on our broadcast. Today is the first day of Black History Month. And on this day in Black history in 1865, the 13th Amendment was ratified and by the 30th Congress. And on February 2nd, tomorrow, the District of Columbia actually abolished slavery. They were first to do that 3 years prior to even the adoption of the 13th Amendment. And in 2021, we're still dealing with that, type of some impact from slavery. In my opinion, it's just a different kind. And tonight, I am pleased to have a voting rights advocate, a voting rights pioneer, hailing from the state of Missouri. He was the first Black mayor of Kansas City. He's a former pastor. He is cousin to the famed Black Panther Eldridge Cleaver, and he is the newly appointed chair of the Financial Services Committee, the subcommittee on housing, community development, and insurance. And that is none other than my guest, Representative Congressman Elijah Emanuel Cleaver. And I was about to say Elijah Cummings because Representative Cleaver went to Prairie View A&M there in Texas, and Elijah Cummings' wife is also a graduate from Prairie View A&M. And that was stuck in my head, and it was there for all the time. So I want to welcome you to the show, Congressman. Forgive me for calling you Representative Elijah to start.
That's fine. That's fine. His wife actually was born in Wichita Falls, Texas. Maya was born in Wichita Falls, Texas, which is my hometown, where I graduated from high school and played. And so she, I know the whole family. Calling me Elijah Cummings is actually a compliment. Although I have to say, he and I, our relationship could have been much better if he hadn't tried to become a preacher. He was a bootleg preacher. I call him the bootleg preacher from Baltimore.
Yes. Now I don't know if he's bootleg, but you certainly tried to be a preacher.
No, he's bootleg. I talked about that at his funeral, and he is because the family all knew that was the case, and he and I were very, very good friends. And anytime somebody can liken me to Elijah Cummings, I'm happy.
Well, Maya is a good friend of mine, and she's been on the broadcast a number of times, and I'm excited. I was working with her when she was the chair of the Maryland Democratic Party before she started running. And of course, she's been on our broadcast a number of times. So certainly I appreciate you allowing me to have that slip. And certainly Elijah, Congressman Cummings was a pioneer as yourself. And the reason I really wanted to have you today was because as I was looking and reading and looking into the different things that are just going on right now, especially after the insurrection, I always try to focus the broadcast on what's at stake for us as African Americans and the impact. And seeing the comment that you made where you said some members of Congress always desire to be the Speaker of the House, but you've had this desire to be the chairman of the subcommittee on housing, economic development, and insurance. Why is that? What is it about that committee that is so impactful for you and made you desire to be that chair, and now you are chair?
Well, if I had thought about it, I would have brought in here the photograph of the house I was born in Texas. I didn't live in a house with indoor plumbing or electricity until I was 7, and my family and I moved into public housing. I was born 26 minutes from the Omni Hotel in downtown Dallas. The reason I know that because recently I was there to speak at an event, and I timed it. But I went from a shack, and when I say shack, I don't mean a rundown house. I mean a shack. And my family, my mother, father, 3 sisters, and I lived in a 3-bedroom housing project for 5 or 6 years. And my father worked essentially 3 jobs. My mother started college when I was in junior high school. My father worked 3 jobs, saved his money, bought a lot in the Black community, and then bought a house over in the white community where they were tearing down a residential area to build a shopping center. And so he bought the house. We couldn't live there, and he had it moved over to the Black neighborhood. And I've seen what housing can do to the psyche of anyone, particularly African Americans. And that's one of the ways we are able to provide generational wealth.
Right.
If we own a home, and we can transfer it down to our children and our children's children. And that's one of the things we haven't had in the past. And so it's where I want to concentrate my energy.
And so what is it that you want to do with your committee and as chairman to try to undo some of the things that have been done in this previous administration and our great brain surgeon and all the things that were taken away from many African Americans in terms of being able to obtain housing and affordable housing at that? What are some of the things that you want to do on that committee? And is there any legislation that you're looking to introduce to try to help progress that vision?
Sure will. Yes. First of all, let me tell you that we have not built any new public housing units since Ronald Reagan was president. Now, we flooded with the Katrina flooded out an entire project in New Orleans. And the policy at HUD since the end of the Reagan administration is called 1-for-1 replacement. So no new public housing is built unless one is destroyed. And we can only build 1-for-1. We can only build one unit of housing for another unit of housing that was destroyed. That's the only way we do it since 1980s. And so if you look at the 1980s and realize that we have not done anything to expand public housing, you know that there are thousands and thousands of people who are standing in line essentially all over the country trying to get in. Now, public housing is supposed to be temporary housing for about 7 years, 5 to 7 years. And that's what most people use it for. Unfortunately, there are people who have gone out and told a lot of the big lies. Well, people want to live in there for the rest of their lives. Look, I grew up in public housing. I never did hear anybody say, man, I can't wait till I get a little older so I can go move into public housing. Like, wait, man, I mean, this is my goal in life. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. And so, but there are people who have it in their heads that that's what is wanted. Now, so what we've got to do is start actually building new units because it'll provide people with an opportunity. I have 3 sisters. All 3 of them are college graduates. One has a master's, one has a PhD. I'm the trifling person in the family. I have a bachelor's degree from Prairie View, and then I have a master's of divinity from St. Paul's School of Theology. But I'm not the only person that came out of public housing. I mean, there are thousands all over the country. My mother started college at Midwestern University while we were in public housing. So now the other part of it is affordable housing. Mm-hmm. Here's what we've got to do to create affordable housing. In the urban core of any city, it doesn't matter what city it is, if you build affordable housing, it's got to be heavily subsidized for the developer. Developers go into business to make money. Black ones, white ones, green ones. If you're a developer, you don't do it say, well, I'm getting ready to go and invest $25 million so I can, feel good about myself. They're trying to make money. And right. So the only way they're going to make money on affordable housing is a subsidy. So if you go and rehab a house in the urban core, that costs $125,000, and then you come in and rehab it, it's going to cost you, let's say, $250,000 to rehab it, or $300,000. Well, you're still not going to get but $125,000 for it, maybe $130,000, but mm-hmm. no more, because that's what has happened in the urban core. So the fact that you can't make money in the urban core is one of the reasons developers don't build housing in the urban core. And so in many communities, including Kansas City, Missouri, where I live, or Washington, D.C., I have an apartment not too far from the Capitol. When I moved into my present location 16 years ago, there were Black folk everywhere on Capitol Hill. I mean, anywhere you went. Right. So my wife came up. My wife was up there. We spent. She came to spend a rare weekend with me. So we walked to the market that morning, and we were looking for Black people. Hey, there's one. There's one. I mean, it's hard. You go to Capitol Hill, you're going to have to hunt Black people down.
You do. You do.
And so, and because they've come in and they have bought those old houses,
right? Gentrified,
gentrification, and they redo the housing, and now what used to cost $300,000 now costs $1.2 million.
Exactly.
So that's what I want to do: affordable housing, and also try to get some new public housing units built, and some what's called tiny housing for college students who are just getting out of college, but it gives them a taste of ownership. In Missouri, you can build one of those houses for about $15,000, and it's a little community. So yeah, I think this is a time to experiment, because Marsha Fudge is very likely going to be confirmed as the chair, as the Secretary of Housing, Urban Development.
So with that, are you going to look to introduce new policies and procedures to help in helping more minorities, African Americans primarily, get those home loans? Because right now, interest rates are bare bottom coronavirus, and they're not able to necessarily show any income or have jobs and things of that nature. What plans do you have to help them be able to qualify for these, to be able to get this affordability and these new homes under the current environment that we're living in?
Well, one of the things we've done so far, we got to continue to do it with opposition, I might add, and that is we were just successful in getting a bill approved that, in part, provided rental assistance. And the reason that's important to our conversation is that if you don't provide, if we did not provide rental assistance, three things happened to the people who lived in those rental units, and all three of them are bad. Number one, they're going to get kicked out of the housing if they can't pay the landlord. Number two, the credit goes bad, and number three, you can't get a home if you have no credit. Right. So we're trying to preserve that credit with the rental assistance. But here's what we've been talking about this for some time, and the chair of the Financial Services Committee, the overall committee, Maxine Waters, is very much interested in this. We've got to change, we think, the way the credit reporting agencies operate. So because Black people, have a whole different philosophy on life, and here's the way you can find out if a black person will pay their bills: light bills, gas bills, church, and if they are paying those, they have good credit. My grandmother.
They're paying their
That's right. That's right. They're going to pay. My grandmother would drive 132 miles to pay her gas bill and light bills. Now, she's from the old school. She didn't trust the mail. She didn't trust my daddy, her son. You know, it's like, I've got to be the one to go walk in there and pay the money in the building. And so there are a lot of black people like that. They may not have, pristine credit, but in the things that matter to them, and the things that can clearly show that they are faithful to their debt is when they're paying the lights and gas and the telephone or the cell phone every month. Right. And so we have to come up with the new ways of measuring African Americans because we have a different culture and we're different than people in the larger culture.
You speaking of that, the agencies, I think the collection agencies and even maybe the primary creditor, they may report you as a charge-off or something of that nature. But then as they wait years and years down the road, then they will come back and touch your credit again and put it back on your credit maybe 3 or 4 years later after the charge-off. And most people don't know, especially people of color, that once that bank charges it off, they come to you guys, the federal government, to get that relief for that money, but then they sell it to a collection agency who then hounds you for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and then they're trying to get it, and then they put it back on your credit again after the primary creditor charged it off. What can you do about that?
Well, the credit rating agencies do report to our committee, and just a little factoid here. I was there, of course, when we had the 2008 economic collapse, when we had to enter the Great Recession. 4 weeks before the collapse, we were having a hearing with the credit rating agencies. We knew nothing about the collapse, and so we asked them. We said, based on your analysis of credit and so forth, you're dealing with all of the banks. Is the U.S. economy solid? And every one of them, there are 3 of them, said, oh, yeah, everything is fine. The economy is fine. Of course, they hadn't gotten out of the parking lot before the collapse began. But the point is that they made a big error, and we know they did, and we can demonstrate it and show that happened. They know that they are not perfect, and we've had them in now to talk about this issue of trying to redesign a new way to measure credit. They can't say for black people we're going to do this, but so it has to be across the board. But we also think that it is applicable across the board. And somebody's making $1 million a year. I think you can measure them a little more strenuously based on whether they're paying their mortgage, whether they are, paying those 3 car notes. Right. But with some of the lower income people, they can be just as faithful. They just pay it differently. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to change things, and we have to change things if we're going to be able to. My big thing is generational wealth. If we're going to be able to provide people with an opportunity for generational wealth, we've got to change the credit rating system in the country.
So let me ask you this, because I know you've been a stalwart, as I said in my opening, a stalwart for voting rights and making sure that we can vote. What is it, and will we be able to get the voting rights bill through HR 1, I believe it was,
yes,
through, and because of the issue with reconciliation and things of that nature, it can't be in the package, or it can be in the package. What's going to happen with that? Is there a new bill going to be introduced in this Congress? How are we going to move forward? Because right now, looking at, I think it's Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, Texas, and Georgia, even though many African Americans were able to vote and participate in the process and came out in large numbers and helped Biden get over the top, those state legislatures are still in Republican hands. And now with reapportionment and redistricting, they're now starting to introduce bills and legislation to restrict voting again. 26 states now are introducing new legislation to restrict voting again. So as a stalwart, what are we going to do about that? How do we move past that? And how can we empower or encourage African Americans to make sure everyone registers, like Stacey Abrams was able to do in each of these states, so that even when all that happens, we can still participate and make a change?
Well, I think we are going to pass the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act. We can pass that tomorrow morning in the House. It's going to be a little more difficult in the Senate, but I do think on something like voting rights, we probably can get the 17 Republicans that we need, and that would not require us to go and do reconciliation. Which, for your audience, a reconciliation is an economic political move in the Senate. They have a bunch of arcane rules, and one of them is that if you bring a financial piece of legislation forth, you have to have 2/3 of the Senate to vote approval, which means that because we only have 50, and one with the vice president, we'd have to get Republican votes. Now, there are a lot of ways you can try to get around it. You can try to connect some financial issues to the Voting Rights Act, being slick politically. I would much rather pass it because it's the right thing to do. And I would like to think at the time of this interview that the majority of the people in the Senate are going to support it. Now, if we're able to get the Voting Rights Act approved, it means that pre-clearance is now back on the table. And your viewers need to understand there's something about pre-clearance. When the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, pre-clearance was a requirement, and that is that a local election board cannot move any. They can't do anything, alter anything in an election, unless the Justice Department clears what they're doing. It's called pre-clearance before the election. Now, it's only in the states that are voting rights states, but this last election was done without the Voting Rights Act in place. Think about what Stacey Abrams could have done in Georgia if she had the power of the Voting Rights Act behind her. Now, she's already should get the Nobel Peace Prize. They should break off the football at the Super Bowl and give her the ball.
Right.
Whatever else she wants. I mean, I think whatever she
wants, she should get.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna send the Temptations to sing at her birthday party.
Something.
But that is a valuable tool to have right now, because I think Georgia has taught Mississippi and South Carolina and Florida and Alabama, Louisiana, that hey, if we can do this, you guys can do it. Right. And so I think that if we can get the Voting Rights Act, it will stop some of the legislatures who are trying to. This is all so embarrassing for our country, that we have men and women who get up every day and go to legislatures to try to figure out how to stop Black people from voting. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is just sick. And then they go to church on Sunday.
Don't mind, sir, if I can throw in under the name of Christianity.
Oh yeah, no, they go to church on Sunday.
Okay.
Oh, the Lord is good, and then go out and it's just it's unbelievable. I don't understand that theology.
It's unreal. It's unreal. And before I let you go, I know time. I have to ask you about the impeachment and what you think. Can you help us understand? Because I think a lot of my viewers and listeners, they don't see how impeaching Donald Trump now at this point will benefit or have an impact on Black America. Can you try to help them understand this topic regarding the focus on Black America and explain why impeaching Donald Trump is vital to our progress, especially given what had occurred for those last 4 years?
My cousin, Herman Jr., hopefully none of your viewers know Herman Jr., this is my cousin. He's been going to prison since he was about 17. I love Herman Jr. He's my cousin. I love him all his life. If Herman Jr. Is in a convenience store and he's stealing stuff, he's just stealing all kinds of stuff, and then he leaves the store, and then somebody runs up and said to the police and the prosecutors, "You can't prosecute him. He left the store. He's no longer in the store." I know, but he stole stuff. I know, but he's not out. He's gone. He's not in the store anymore. You can't. If we start telling presidents, you can do any wrong you want, and if you can just last until you can get out, there's no consequences. No consequences. So we've got to do it because we got to send the message. And young African Americans who are in jail right now for doing a lot less than what the president has done, has probably heard all of their lives that justice is blind in the United States, that we have even-handed justice, and so everybody's going to be treated the same. That, of course, is not true, but this would be the biggest demonstration of its falsity. If Donald Trump is not able to do anything, is able to leave the office and get away with all of the other things he's been guilty of doing. And so we've got to send a message to these young Black kids that the justice is blind. Now, I need to say very quickly that the president of the United States is still, even today, trying to claim that he won Georgia. And people need to understand that in the states that he claims he won, which would be Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, the areas that he has that he's questioning are the areas where Black people live. I mean, the Black vote is what he's really saying. Right. I mean, he won't say that, but his supporters understand, the silent nature of what he's doing. And African Americans need to be concerned about this, double standard of justice. Let me tell you this: if Barack Obama had put Chelsea, his daughter, two daughters on the payroll, and if they had been, having breakdancing parties, I don't think they breakdance anymore, but I don't know what the new stuff is. But if they were having parties in the White House, they would have been putting in
trademarks.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they'd be in jail. I mean, they'd be deep into jail. Yes. And so, what when it came time for me to put my name on that impeachment, I put it on there readily and eagerly because I understand what has happened. Remember, I lived in projects. I know what can happen to people who are Black. And I know, and they can get beaten up and nothing done about it, and everything is cool when it happens, when it's done by the police. So we've got to demonstrate for these young people who don't believe that anymore. We're saying, we've seen what happened to Michael Brown, with Trayvon Martin, right. They call the roll. So right. We've got to be able to say, no, we stood up, and here's a man who broke the law, and we would not let him go back. We are not going to turn around on him or make it easy. Now, he may not get impeached by the Senate, but it won't be because the African Americans and the Latinos in Congress didn't do their job.
That's it. And finally, let me ask you this, as I always do. I always ask my guests, what's at stake for Black America? What's at stake for us if we don't roll back the state legislators who are trying to stop our voting rights, if we don't roll back the Trump-McConnell policies that have hampered us and could hamper us in the future, what's at stake for us as Black America? Our
very future is at stake. Mitch McConnell doesn't want to let any legislation get through. We're trying to get legislation through that will help the American public, including African Americans. For example, we're struggling right now trying to make sure that we get more money to HBCUs, like Prairie View, the school from which I graduated. We're also right now trying to figure out ways in which we can get the money put in place so that we can do these massive affordable housing programs. Right now, if the people who are listening to you, looking at your broadcast tonight, look at the paper tomorrow, they're going to read that what Senator McConnell wants to do is take out of the stimulus proposal money to cities and states, but mainly to cities and counties. Well, why? Because that is where you find the Black populations heavily located.
Right.
And so they're trying to do damage to cities. Now, the message is always subliminal, but we've been doing this a long time as Black people, so we can see it. They got to come up with some new strategies because we can see it so clearly. And so what we're trying to do in Congress is hold people accountable while at the same time making progress for African Americans economically. And from my perspective, generational wealth. Bobby Scott, African American from state of Virginia, chairs the Education Committee. And Bobby has a very, very ambitious agenda. I mean, he would be someone, if you at some point want to get him on the show, I think you would, your viewers would really benefit by that.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we got people in key positions on these committees. The first time we've ever had this many people in chairmanships. And so for the first time, we're in a position to make things happen, at least in the House, and maybe, just maybe, things can change in the Senate.
I hope so, sir. I really do. And given the many committees that now African Americans are chairing and we've are out there, I hope we can make great strides with policy, because the reality is we may only have 2 years. The slim majority that we have in the House, and with reapportionment and redistricting, and the Supreme Court saying that you can do it by race and political party and everything else, it's going to be very difficult for Democrats to continue to hold on if we don't get everyone out there registered to vote and to the poll.
Because the lines will be drawn probably by summer and into the fall, creating new districts. And I can tell you, the redistricting is going to be done in a way to eliminate seats that are being held by African Americans. And when that happens, we start falling back.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most of the voters don't recognize or understand that. But I thank you. I thank you for being the stalwart that you are. I thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us tonight and educating us and empowering us to understand exactly what's at stake for us socially, economically, and politically. Thank you so much, sir.
Good to be with you. Thank you for what you're doing too. I
appreciate it, and I hope to call you back again soon.
All right, glad to do it.
All right, thank you. And that's what we have. I thank Congressman Cleaver for joining us tonight, but we have to recognize and understand what's at stake for us, what's at stake for our families and our community, because it is vital that we recognize what's happening. And it's also vital that we recognize that this impeachment process that's going through, and how now the GOP wants to say, oh, why are we doing this? Let's all come together. Let's unite. Isn't that what Biden said? Let's unite. Oh my God, no, we can't impeach Donald Trump now. What good does it do? Quite frankly, in some pieces, I wouldn't want to have him impeach where he can run again, because what I want to do is I want to put all those people who did not vote to impeach, put them on trial during their reelection. put them on trial for adhering to, for supporting, and for turning a blind eye to insurrectionists in the U.S. Capitol, in the United States. Put it and turn a blind eye to 5 people being killed and another one committing suicide. Put what's it called? A bullseye on their head. The same way that they used to put bullseyes on Obama and Democratic legislators, we're gonna put a bullseye on their head and take them out for not upholding to the Constitution, because the Constitution says in the 14th Amendment, if you subvert and adhere to any type of insurrection in Congress, you should be expelled. You've committed a crime. So I'm hoping that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and I hope he grows a backbone, just like the rest of the Democratic Party grows a backbone, to kick Josh. Oh, I forgot to ask him about Josh Hawley. Darn it. That's what I was going to ask him about. See, he went on so much and so good, I forgot about all the questions I had. But we got to get rid of Josh Hawley, and we got to get rid of what's his name, Ted Cruz, and the other 10 others. I think it's 13 all in all. We got to get rid of 13 of those senators, get their asses out of Congress, out of the Senate, because they supported insurrection. There was no steal of anything going on. There was no steal of the election. I won by a landslide. No, ass, you didn't win by a landslide. You got your landslide ass whooped. That's what happened. But 126 members of Congress, that's half of the Republican Party of the Senate. They all need to be expelled. Every last one of them need to be expelled. And until that happens, I don't think there's going to be credibility around what is going on in Congress. And Democrats are going to lose credibility. They're also going to have an issue come 2022. I think it's 6 or 7 seat majority right now. And those districts that Democrats won in 2018, a lot of them were Republican districts that, you know, Republicans and independents were upset about and decided that, hey, they wanted to get rid of that person who was in office, but they only support the Democrat for 1 term. A lot of Democrats lost. And a lot of that happened because of some of the defunding police rhetoric and all the things that allow for bumper stickers, that allow for quick messaging, that allows people who are weary and leery to say, you know what, I'm going to not support that guy who's on the Democratic side, even though I don't like this Republican. I'm not going to support him because I don't want to defund the police, or I don't want to stop law enforcement. Not understanding that the message was really reallocate the resources, which is what they should have said. They should have said, hey, we need to reallocate resources for mental health, for community outreach, for other issues, instead of defunding the police. I thought it was a stupid idea myself, right? As a former cop, my family, you know, law enforcement, you don't say you're going to defund the police or you're going to get rid of ICE and things like that, because that tells people that there's going to be mayhem in the street, that people are going to be running rampant, and therefore crimes aren't going to be solved. And even the most intelligent or most secure person who can read between the lines still says, government, I don't know. I may not do that. I'm gonna stick, you know, it's like the old saying, you know, stick with the evil you know rather than the evil you don't know. Because if they have already been able to label you as evil and put you out there because you said you want to defund the police and you're not in a safe Democratic district, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. Unlike Republicans, as we see now in Congress, all the Republicans that are saying and doing what they want to say and do are in safe districts. They're in safe Republican-controlled districts. And because they have Republican state legislatures, they're not even worried about being defeated in a primary or a general election, because there's nobody who's going to be able to run against them, because they're going to draw the lines as safe and solid as possible So you're not going to have any issues. You're not going to have any problems in there. And that's the problem. That is the problem. And that's why I was asking the congressman, what is it that we can do? Because if we don't pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, if that's not passed, and if it does not put back in place Title 5, Title 7 of the Voting Rights Act, you can guarantee that they're just going to wipe out every ability for African Americans to be able to vote. Right now, I think it's the state of Pennsylvania. It could be Georgia. Their state legislature, Republicans, are now going to require 2 forms of ID for you to vote absentee. 2 forms of ID. Now, is that going to be driver's license and social security card, driver's license and passport? I mean, credit card. What is it going to mean now that you have to have 2 forms of ID? Now, granted, how many of you can put your hand on your social security card right now? How many of you? How many of you can put your hand on a second form of ID? Now, is it going to be required as a picture ID? So that means you have to have a passport, because there's no picture on your social security card. There's no picture on a credit card. Now, think about that. If you're going to have to put your credit card out there now, your credit card number, because, in some places they ask for a picture ID and then another form, a credit card serves as a form. But who's going to put their credit card information out there in public with the numbers and expiration date and all that out there? Who's going to do that? Nobody, especially not Black. They're not going to do that. So what other form are they going to ask for? If they're now going to require you get a passport, which has a picture on it, or are they going to ask for a birth certificate? Which, how many people say over 60 or 50 know where it is? How many young people, 18 to 24, 26, know where their birth certificate is? Now they're going to have to go and pay for a birth certificate or pay for a passport to now show 2 forms of ID. 2 forms. The shenanigans that are happening are just absolutely crazy. And the result of it is going to be that less and less African Americans are going to be able to vote unless we do something about it. And unless we're able to put together the operation of being empowered without having to be, engaged without having to be empowered to do so. In other words, I should not have to come to you as a voter, come into your community as a voter and motivate you to vote. I shouldn't have to do that. I should be, as a candidate, come to you, tell you what my platform is, tell you what my issues I'm going to fight for are, and you get your butt up and you go and vote, period. I shouldn't have to make you feel good about it. I shouldn't have to make you get excited about it. I shouldn't even have to have you determine whether or not I'm the lesser of 2 evils. You need to start understanding what the hell your best interest is. And that's what you need to vote on. Because I'm sick and tired of this whole idea, I wasn't motivated to vote for them because they didn't excite me. We don't give a damn about your excitement. We care about what the hell is going on in this country, in this nation, to deal with it.
Me something for 40 years, I would be inclined to believe it, particularly if nobody's refuting what you are saying. And then folks are saying things like, well, I don't understand what happened. Well, you have to engage your folks. There is no substitute for engaging people. Now, we have these mass shootings, right, at these schools.
Right.
And people got to hear, well, I don't understand what happened. Well, think about it. You have undereducated your folks for 40 years. You have lied to them, tell them if they get an education, you get a shirt and tie job, you can make great money, and you retire. But once upon a time, that was true. Now you got folks going to school, and the ones that do pursue higher education, they end up, if they don't have the money, which most of them don't, they end up with this load of debt, being underemployed, making $15 an hour, living in their mother's basement. Now, you just made a terrorist. you just made a terrorist. So if you want to know the recipe for making a terrorist, that's it. Underserve your community, lie to them, and put them in their mother's basement. See what happens, and that's what happens. If you see, most of the folks that have those shootings are white males between the age of 20 to 30. And guess what? They've been lied to. They thought they were going to do this, that, and what have you, and life was going to be beautiful. Well, none of that happened. And now instead of making $30 an hour, you're making $15 an hour, paying down a load of debt that maybe you'll get it all paid off by the time you retire. But that pie in the sky has disappeared. And then they did about us. Why are we shooting up places? Well, because we have been underserved and underemployed for hundreds of years. So it's not nothing new to us, 40 for them, 400 for us, One thing Freeman Bosley Sr. used to say, who was the father of the first Black mayor of St. Louis, he said, you can't commit suicide by jumping out of a basement window. So if we have to turn that ship around, once upon a time, you could feed a family on a high school education.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because high schools had carpentry,
right,
plumbing, electrician.
Union
you
job.
Could take those trades, but when you take those things out of school, unions are crying. Unions are crying for skilled labor people. Right now, the opportunities are there, but because we're underserving our community, undereducating our community, now it's to the point where you actually have corporations now doing the investments so far as getting folks into skilled aids and internships. And it's not that they care about you personally, and I'm not going to get into that, whether they do or whether they don't. I'm sure some do and some don't. But at the end of the day, if you got some jobs sweeping the floor and you go out and search for some floor sweepers, and so a lot of our problems that we have is of course, we're not only being undisturbed by. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this.
Oh, I've lost your. Yes.
What's at stake for us?
What's the thing that's at stake for us is that we are going to leave this planet out, leaving something for our kids and grandkids to inherit, because now the only thing that they are inheriting is hands and jail time. And unfortunately, when you take the dream away from somebody, when you take the hope away from somebody and you leave them in a hopeless situation and leave them with economic choices that they have to make, I don't think any child ever picked up a gun to rob a store if they were able to go to a job. Now, we talk about taking the guns from kids. Okay, if you do that, if you take the gun out of their hands, what are you putting in it? Either a calculator in it, what are you replacing the gun with? Just to say, well, we need to take the guns out of the plan for them. You can't, stop the violence, stop the robbing, and so forth and so on, and not replace it with something. And the greater good understands that. Why? Because their mother goes to the grocery store too. What do you want a kid to do? Do you want him begging your mama for $1 going into a store? Or would you like him to be in a bank running your mom's credit so you can give her a loan? What do you want a kid to do? Do you want him selling drugs on the street? Or do you want to set it up so he can go to a pharmacological college so he can be writing you a prescription? Now, yes, there's a lot of space between being a pharmacist and a drug dealer, but we need something filling in the middle. There's got to be something in the middle, and you cannot save every kid, but you can increase his chances of success, his chances of following a calling for a gift he may have, if you just change the circumstances by which he can operate in. Now, you cannot, if you look at the population of folks who are actually in jail, a great portion of them, and I think majority, are functionally illiterate, can't write a sentence, don't know their timetables. How can you expect to have a full enriched society if you don't put what needs to be there to make that happen? It's not going to fall out of the sky.
Right.
So that being said, we have to have policies in place who can make those things happen. Again, not save everybody, but increase the chances of a kid having a successful life, been able to follow a calling, you know. So that's the situation we are in. And again, it's a big ship to turn around. And don't think that the powers that be didn't know what they were doing. I mean, yeah, I understand they know what our capabilities are, because even in a condition of oppression, we are still the most creative, inventive, innovative folks on the planet. Because anytime we're given an opportunity to excel, we do. I mean, and that's in any field you care to name.
You're absolutely right.
So we know that the power is there. We just got to convince the kids that no, it's not your fault that you are in this economic condition. You know, so I feel that that's my calling. I understand that they're getting a raw deal so far as education, and our system here, which has been called one of the strangest educational systems in the country. Our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is clearly designed to destroy itself. They come up with these charter schools which don't have the same mandates that public schools have, and don't show any significant improvement on education from public schools. So why there aren't any qualifying issues for you to start a school? It's like if somebody is fixing your electricity in your house and you tell them to stop, and you see somebody walking down the street, hey, you busy? I want you to come in here and fix this light. He don't know nothing about electricity, might burn the house down, but it's okay for him to come in here and do electrical work. Why would there be that? I think that charter schools are merely a money grab. That's all it is. These schools have $100 million and greater budget to start a school. He can do that and receive government funds to run it, even with no pre-qualification of actually running a school. Now, it's obvious that that's not going to work. I know that, you know that, and whoever came up with those laws, and believe me, I'm trying to find the folks behind the curtain who are pushing the buttons to have this type of ridiculous, counterproductive legislation going on. I mean, we are living post 1860 times with pre 1860 ideas, and folks need to understand we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. So, and again, the 1%ers, again, their mothers go to the store too, and their constituents. So what kind of world do you want to live in? I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's beyond profits. We are talking about just plain out greed. Say 40 years ago, the difference in income between the person that pushed the broom and the president of the company was usually between 10 to 20 times. Now it's between 200 and 400 times. It does not make any sense for a person to work $15 an hour when the CEO is making 15 million, and most of that untaxable, because a lot of it is just bonuses and stuff, but they have quietly taken over everything to a point now where folks is looking around wondering what happened. What happened is while you were asleep, they were still awake, working 24 hours to turn you into an ever-ready battery, just powering their agenda. So yeah, it doesn't look good, but all we can do is continue to fight. We're gonna win some of those rounds,
Right.
But we have to stay woke. We have to stay woke.
Right. We have to. I want to thank you, sir, for joining us tonight. We've had some technical difficulty, but I want to make sure that we get you back on the show again, because I want to utilize you for all our companies, social, economic, because we want to make sure we have you around again. So join us. We get you around again. Join us.
Okay. Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
All right. So, folks, we always talk about, and I apologize for the technical difficulty that we were having tonight. I'm not in my normal studio tonight. I'm out on location in North Carolina, so not to make an excuse, but certainly to give context to where we are and what's going on. I want to thank you and appreciate you for bearing with us and bearing, dealing with the technical difficulties that we're having. But certainly, as both of my guests talked about, as both of them said, we have to engage ourselves. And as I said, we don't need to be motivated by somebody else. We have to be motivated by our circumstances. We have to be motivated by each other. We have to be motivated by what it is that we need to do for ourselves, because unless we do that, and until we do that, we will continually be left behind. We will continually be sitting out and wondering what's happening, where is it happening, what's going on. And that is not something that we can continue to do, because in 10 to 15 years, when people of color, African Americans, Latinos, Hispanics are the majority population in this nation, we have to determine and decide, where are we going to be in that pecking order? Are we going to be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or last? Because the reality of it is this: the policies that are being planned today at every state legislature are being planned with that in mind, with the recognition and understanding that Black folks are going to be the majority. And if you don't understand that and start getting your cousin, your nieces, your nephew, big mama, auntie boo, uncle Ray Ray, and grandpa and grandma and everybody else register to vote and voting in every election. I don't care if it's dog catcher. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. As I said before, we should not have to, I should not have to, the person who's coming to knock on your door or not knocking on your door should not have to motivate you to think about your own self-interest and self-preservation. You have to understand that for yourself. Now, if you're too dumb to do that, oh well, you belong where you are. But if you got an ounce of sense, if you got an ounce of understanding, and you sick and tired of being sick and tired, or sick and tired of being broke, poor, or disenfranchised, then get your behind out there, register to vote, and take your butt to the poll. Like Congressman Cleaver said, you can march, you can walk, you can do all this other stuff, but you won't walk 2 blocks to go vote and stand in line. But if there's a concert ticket or some new Jordans, your ass will be out there the night before standing in line in 10-degree weather so you can get the new Jordans. Or you can get the concert ticket to Lil Wayne or Beyonce or whoever it is that you favor and you like. And you be staying out there. And if any of you fools out there buying Lil Wayne tickets, you're a fool. Because he wanted to keep your butt disenfranchised. He wanted Trump to win. And then if you buying 50 cents tickets, you're a double fool. Because he was doing the same thing. So anybody else on that list, you need to understand. Cut them off the same way they was willing to cut you off. Do it. That's my show. I'm going to keep talking about this insurrection. I'm going to keep talking about what's going on. I'm going to keep telling you to get your butt out there and vote, because that is where your power lies. Think about it from this perspective. If your vote didn't matter, since it doesn't matter to you, but if your vote didn't matter, why in the hell are they trying to stop you from voting? Because if it didn't matter, they would care less. They wouldn't be trying to stop you. They would let you do what you want to do. But it does matter. So that's where you have to stop and think and realize and recognize that obviously there's power behind your vote. Until next week, if it's social, economic, or political, it's Black Politics Today. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And of course, check us out. I was going to put out our latest issue of Black Politics Today magazine. Certainly go to our website, blackpoliticstoday.com, subscribe and to our magazine. This past one that we sent out in January, which was The Essence of Blackness. Certainly we wanted to feature and talk about exactly how powerful we are as people of color. And as my man, Representative Michael Persons indicated, we are resilient and powerful, as well as Representative Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver. I want to thank both of them for joining us tonight. And of course, I want to thank you as well. And until next week, as I said, thank you so much and good night.